Project Zomboid, it's a game I've played on and off since it joined Steam Early Access 2014. I was always drawn to it. The 2D, I know it's not strictly 2D, there are 3D elements in there, but the 2D isometric survival horror game, I was always frustrated by the UI, the clunkiness of the controls, and ended up leaving it alone. There wasn't half as much complexity back then as there is now. But at the end of last year, 2021, in December, they released Build 41 of the game. And it's gone down really well. Mainly, I think, a big part of the buzz is to do with the multiplayer, and I'll get to that. But the list of changes for this build 41 are so extensive. They've cleaned up the graphics, they've cleaned up the audio, the way the game looks and feels to play now is very pleasing. The combat is pleasing. I mean, it still has its slight issues with the controls and you can get wrong-footed occasionally, but most of the time now, if something goes wrong in the game, I feel like it was my fault. I made a mistake, I overextended myself, or whatever it may be. It's no longer fighting the game to have fun. Now the kind of the UX, the user experience is, I can see why it's designed the way it is in order to allow me to do the things I need to do as I move from house to house. Yeah, anyway, I'm waffling too much, but basically, in short, I think Project Zomboid with Build 41 is now the game that they wanted it to be all that time ago. And I have been playing it solid. I've been playing... I've got like 40 hours in the game already, and I never got to that stage with the previous build of Project Zomboid. I remember things being very abstract before. I am wearing a certain type of clothing, but it doesn't really show on my character. My character doesn't do a lot of animations to let me feel connected to what's going on screen. Now they really do. You pick up a trench coat, you're wearing a trench coat. You pick up some glasses, you've got glasses on. There are various animations for little things that you're doing as you're moving around that really make you feel connected with the character. So that's one of the main things. The atmosphere in the game as well, the way what's springing to mind to me in terms of atmosphere, you think you get this with like a 3D game, point of view game more, but now, say your first night in the game, you close all the curtains in the house, you turn off the lights, you're sitting in the dark. You still can't sit on chairs, you can sit on the floor. They're adding sitting on chairs at some point in the future, but that's the kind of intricacy you need, and you're listening for the zombies outside and hoping they're not going to find you. For a 2D isometric game, the sense of immersion and being in the moment is incredible now. I really, really feel it. A lot of that is to do with the excellent sound design. It's incredible. Not only do you have to listen out for zombies, you can hear them coming. The ambient sound of crows squawking forlornly as you walk around this apocalyptic landscape. There are other things like I was living on a house at one point with one of my characters outside a wooded area, and there was rustling going on in the trees, and it's ambient depending on where you are, but I'm turning around. Is that a zombie? Is it not a zombie? What's moving through the woods? The sound design is excellent, pulling me into the game. Wow. As someone who grew up with 2D games and kind of saw the transition into 3D, I feel like I still have a fondness for this type of game, this type of viewpoint, and this type of character that I'm looking at, and it really speaks to me. The same way The Sims speaks to me, but The Sims is more of that's a simulation of everyday life, and you don't have direct control over your character, and you're controlling multiple characters. This is like you're one guy, you're focused on the one guy, apart from the multiplayer when you're playing with other people. But yeah, you really feel like I have direct control over my guy. You definitely feel like one mistake and it's all over. It's absolutely brutal, punishing in terms of you get bit by a zombie, you are dead. I think the bites have 100% infection rate, and it's easy to get bit, it's easy to get surrounded. You have a cone of vision, so you can be fighting 5 zombies ahead. I'm handling these guys. I've got a spiked baseball bat. I can take these out one by one. Yeah, but then you don't hear the one coming from behind you, and you're dead. You make a little slip up. This is where they need to improve a little bit, I think, in terms of the user experience, so and controls, so that it's a little bit more precise. You can sometimes get wrong-footed if you do misclick in those combat situations, and the character doesn't quite do what you wanted him to do, or you move off slightly. When they're coming through windows and they can swipe at your feet, sometimes the game doesn't register that you're targeting and you need to hit them. Anyway, little minutiae like that. But in terms of absorbing me into the world, it's incredible. There are so many systems in the game as well, system upon system, and I think that is part of the problem why it needs more iteration, it needs more refinement. So for instance, although the user experience, the UI is a lot better than it was, there are these systems upon systems. So if you want to do something with a certain item, sometimes it will be right click it in your menu. Sometimes it will be sometimes it will be you have to have the 2 correct items in your menu, and then you can right click on something in the world. Sometimes you have to drop the item, then right click on it. Sometimes there are so many variations of how to do something. It needs streamlining. Maybe something like The Sims, a radial menu where everything is this radial system. But currently there are so many ways. There's cooking, there's trapping, there's mechanics in the game. There are all these different things. They all have different ways of doing these things. When you get a car, suddenly you've got an actual radial menu. You press V to bring up all the things you can do with your car, unless you right click on the car and then you can do certain stuff from that menu. So it needs shoring up in that respect. But so I find myself going out of the game. I wanted to make a sheet rope to put out of the top window of a house so I can escape if the zombies come downstairs. So you have to have 2 sheet ropes in your inventory because it's a 2-story building, so you need 2 of them. You also need a nail and a hammer in your inventory, and then you can right click on an open window and attach a sheet rope to the window. So that's just one example of, like, if you didn't know that, you maybe thought you could do it just well, maybe I don't know. That's maybe not the best example. That's fairly intuitive, but then there are other ones that are kind of really out there in terms of how you do them. So yeah, anyway, not to harp on too much about that. So as I was saying, it's the systems that have really absorbed me. It's incredibly difficult to level them up. That's the thing, and I think this is a really realistic portrayal of a post-apocalyptic world. So if you start out as a burger flipper, a guy working in a burger joint, the world ends, you're not immediately going to know how to hotwire cars and things and survive in the wilderness. And if you want to learn those things, it's going to take a long time. And how do you survive while you're learning how to do this stuff? There's that stuff, but it's the range of things that you can do. So you have options. You can be a scavenger who goes through houses just living on his wits, living on scraps. You can learn to fish, feed yourself that way. You can learn all kinds of machinery. You can build stuff in the game. I had been playing about 10-15 hours before I realized the extent of the building mechanics in the game, and also the fact that most of the things that in the world that I was interacting with, I could pick up and move to my base. If I want to take a washing machine to my base, I can. I thought these shops and houses that I was going into were static, and I have to build my base over there. No, I can put them in the trunk of my car. Well, put them on the seat in my car. Take the washing machine. Take the chairs. Take the cupboards in the van. Take my word for it, it will constantly surprise you, the range of things that you can do in this game. Wow. I'm just thinking about it, and it's more, much more than I thought it was. I thought it was just a survival horror game where you're scavenging through houses. You can do all sorts of stuff in this game. The cars are fantastic. I thought, I don't want a car in the apocalypse. I'm gonna be like Mr. Wilderness guy. As soon as I realized what you're able to do with the car, this is the next point that I'm coming up to now. It just allows you to move around from base to base, get things set up how you want. You need transportation, but getting it is really difficult. So you have to get a gas can, you have to siphon gas. Last time I played, I realized that I could drive up to the gas pumps at a petrol station before the electricity goes off at the end of 7 days, when society finally loses all its amenities, and I was able to fill up the gas tank. But all of these things dovetail together, and the way the zombies move, the way the world functions, to create these emergent storylines that this team is so fixed on details. It's incredible. So yeah, just as a weird example, last night I had been doing a load of scavenging. I was nervous, I was panicked. I cleared out the zombies in a car park of a shop, a convenience store. So I was in my car, I drove up to the back, turned off the engine, locked all the doors, had a bag of chips because I was hungry, and my character had a smoke because he's a smoker. All the traits that are in the game. That's another thing. So what kind of game allows you to do that? And I'm listening to the ambient sound. It's misty. The weather effects in this game. So it's misty. I can hear crows in the background. I'm hunkered in my car at the back of a convenience store having a bag of chips and smoking. What kind of game allows you to do this? Jeez, this game. Yeah, the weather effects are great. Really get a sense of that, and they can be a double-edged sword. So you might get jumped on if there is fog going on, but it also affects the zombies, and they can't see as far as well. So sometimes I think fog cover is good for exploring the world. Emergent storytelling, yeah, that's the thing. My first try using a Molotov cocktail, I figured out how to craft one of those. A ripped sheet, a bottle of bourbon, and a lighter ready to go. I was actually on my way home when I decided to do this. I got the Molotov, I got to get out, there's a crowd of zombies there, so I threw it. First time throwing it, because stuff is rare in this game. You can't go around throwing Molotov cocktails willy-nilly unless you put it on the creative mode. And it hit the zombies, so I was running around by this crowd of flaming zombies, but then of course the fire spread. It started to set the post office on fire. Now I haven't checked the post office yet, so what's going to be in there? Once this building is burnt down, it's going to be gone from the world that I've rolled, so I need to get in there and see what's salvageable before the fire spreads throughout it all. Thought I had time, jumped by 2 zombies inside the building. One was on fire, set me on fire, and I died in the stockroom of the post office from 3rd-degree burns. And it's happening all the time, that kind of emergent storytelling. So they added the multiplayer. That's been huge. I did dip in with some friends and we played some multiplayer. It's very good. The feel of multiplayer is quite different in terms of immersion. You don't get as immersed in multiplayer, but what you really do get is a sense of, in a survival game like this, is how much more you can do with multiple people. The scope of what you can do increases exponentially once you have a group of people in the game all working together. So as I say, the skills are really hard to level up if you don't start as one of the professions that knows those things already. So one of your guys can focus here, one can focus here. If you're one person, it's very hard to do everything. It was very enjoyable. Multiplayer is something that I think will change this game from kind of a curiosity to possibly something huge. It has the potential to do that. This build 41, it was the game was averaging 4,000 players up to the December of 21. It jumped from 4,000 average players to 20,000. Looking at the stats now, it seems like the game is on track to double that in January 2022 when this video is recorded. So I think it's the multiplayer, because obviously the multiplayer is the thing that brings all the Twitch streamers, brings all the influencers in and gets eyes on the project, because they want to play with all their friends and makes for good content. But I do think along with the multiplayer, it's the changes to the core mechanics of the game that get closer to the original vision that the devs obviously had. I didn't realize, I thought the attention to detail was somehow pedantic in a way, and I couldn't envisage exactly what they were going for. It just seemed like inventory management, the game. Now it doesn't. The gameplay is allowed to come through the user experience and the UI so much better. Absolutely loving this game at the minute. Along with the multiplayer, the replayability is huge. You have various modes, survival modes. The map is absolutely huge for this game. You see it at first, you think, oh, nice little quaint little town. You zoom out, you zoom in. So the town that you start in is just one town of many, and you can explore this map in survival mode. Then there's a creative mode. There are various scenarios, and those will be added over time, I'm sure, and extended. It's a very challenging game, but the learning curve is rewarding now. I was thinking this is brutally punishing, and it remains punishing all the way through, but I don't know, the way the AI works in this game, it really makes you think about what you... In most zombie survival games, I was playing Dying Light not too long ago, and you run fast enough in Dying Light and you will outpace the zombies and get to a safe house. In this game, if you run fast, you will just run into more zombies, and you're running, so every zombie can hear what you're doing. So at first, in the initial, I would say it took me about 6 hours to really get a handle on character after character dying because I couldn't escape zombies. And I eventually figured out what you have to do is you have to use a combination of sprint and sneak. You have to break lines of sight and give them the runaround in order to escape them. And I didn't realize that. It sounds ridiculous, but I didn't realize the game was that complex. I just really didn't. And it was only when I got the sense of the complexity of how the AI is functioning and how it's detecting you. So you run away from a crowd of zombies. You're just going to run into other zombies, but maybe you run down an alleyway. But they are going to pursue you because they hear you and they saw the last place you were, so they're going to go there. And if you run around the corner, you're still sprinting, so when they get to where you were, they're going to hear your footsteps. So you kind of have to sprint down, break line of sight, go into crouch around the corner. Yeah, and there's a great sense of achievement when you should find it. I can do this. I know how it works now, and I can start to survive. But stick with it. It's really punishing at the start. But again, it's like that. That's what I kind of appreciate about the game. It doesn't hold your hand. So, Project Zomboid, worth playing in 2022. Worth playing more than any time in its life so far, and it can only get better from now on. The game as it stands, I am happy to play. It's absorbing me. I can see improvements that need to be made. The team are still gonna do that. They've had a tumultuous development. It seems like they've had stuff that's been stolen. Source code for the game was stolen, and they had to rebuild things, and 9 years development on a game. Dedication, isn't it? It reminds me of RimWorld in a sense, that game that was being developed for such a long time. And there are pros and cons to alpha and kickstarted stuff in that they never leave alpha, but really alpha just seems to me to mean a game that is in constant development, like an MMO that constantly has patches and it's never static. That's just what Project Zomboid is going to be. So I'm looking forward to what they've talked about now. Next is NPCs, so not zombies but animals, potentially other human beings, I guess, and something else which I can't remember right now. It'll come back to me. But in 2022, yeah, I mean, play it solo or play it multiplayer, both are solid experiences now, and I'm so glad I decided to jump back into this game. Sometimes when I'm moving from game to game and doing these kind of videos, I appreciate a game, but I'm not necessarily, don't necessarily fall in love with it. That's the nature of doing sort of reviews and things like that. So it's wonderful when you can play a game that genuinely surprises you, delights you, challenges you, and you fall in love. That's how I feel with Project Zomboid. So yeah, if you're thinking about it, give it a go. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all the comments. I had a really nice one the other day saying they liked the vid, so thank you for that. Tune in for the next one. Sub up if you like, and I'll talk about more games in the future. I have been Napyet, and I will see you next time. Bye.